Daily 100 in... Sorry, school bus. Hey, he waved! Bus driver waved to me! What's going on, guys? We got some pretty exciting news today. 2 months ago, I put out a video about a rumored new R6 design that was debunked. So in that video, I talked about why it was just a photoshopped concept someone had made and not actual leaked images of the new R6. Well, over the past month or so, Yamaha has actually released a couple teaser videos for the new R6. And this morning, they officially announced it. The 2017 Yamaha R6 is now official. The new full release video is out. The specs are released. All the information is there. Now, in that last R6 video I made, and in other videos, I've mentioned before that I want to get another R6. Didn't know when, but I did want to wait until they redesigned them, and that time has finally come. So, I know you're probably asking whether I'm going to get one, and I don't know yet. So Yamaha released the information this morning. I knew it was coming. I was so freaking stoked. And I immediately tweeted out my excitement. I put out a poll, and this is all on my Twitter, at Motonosity. You can go follow me. I put out a poll. I said, 2017 R6 for my next build series. And the two choices, I put yes and also yes. I love the design of the new R6. And I know a lot of people won't like it because it looks a lot like the new R1. And the new R1 was very polarizing. And that happens a lot with new vehicle designs. People fall in love with the design that they're used to, and so when they change it, they don't like it, which is understandable. I like forward progress, and that's coming from someone who has that previous generation R1 and loves it. I love how my bike looks, but I also love the new design on the new R1. So for me, the new R6 design is great. The new R6 looks a lot like the new R1, but that was expected. It wouldn't make any sense for Yamaha to move forward with the designs of their bikes and not have some sort of consistency between them. That's always the case with any type of bike, any type of car. They have consistency across their product line in how things look. So that's a given. We knew that the R6 redesign, if it happened, if they released a new R6, that it would be on the same kind of level as the R1 in terms of design. So me personally, I like it. I think it improves the lines of the bike a lot better. They're saying that it's much more aerodynamic than the previous R6, which makes sense. There's not so many panels on the side. If you've worked on the current generation R6, you know that there are like 1,000 different fairing pieces. That's not the case with the new redesign. It looks kind of like when you think of a track, like track fairings, if you get track fairings for your bike, most of the time they're like all one solid piece to improve aerodynamics. That's kind of how it looks. So I like it. I like the design a lot because I like the R1 design, and the R6 looks a lot like it. So when the release first came out and Yamaha announced it, I was stoked. I loved it, and I tweeted out that excitement. But then I started looking in closer at things. I went through the product page, or the actual like motorcycle page on Yamaha's website. I pulled up the old R6 and I pulled up the new R6, and I started comparing everything. Comparing pictures, comparing specs, and something became very apparent. Yamaha wants you to believe that this is a brand spanking new R6, and they're going to want you to upgrade to it. But it's not. It is the same old R6, same frame design, same subframe design, same engine. All the internals are the exact same. Really, all that they've done is changed the visual look of the bike. So the whole form factor, the fairing pieces, that is all new design. The subframe is now made of magnesium. The tank itself is now made out of aluminum, so there's shaving weight there. But on a whole, the bike actually weighs 2 pounds heavier. But all the specs of the bike are the exact same. The wheelbase is the same. The length is the exact same. The width is I think a little less than a half an inch narrower, I want to say. and that's just a change from the actual fairing design. The height is actually 2 inches taller, but if you look at the bike, that's only because the design of the front fairing and the windscreen actually angles up more. The old R6 had a real sloping design for the windscreen, and the new one is more of like it's not a double bubble, but it's more of that bubble windscreen style where it kind of pops up a little bit more, and I actually like that. I think it improves the ability for you to actually get in full tuck behind the windscreen. But aside from those changes that are due to actual plastic redesign, the bike is the same dimensions. The rake of the forks is the same, the engine is the exact same, putting out the exact same power. If you have the current R6, the new R6 is going to ride almost identically to the old one, except for some of the changes that they made. It's not a solely visual redesign. There are improvements. They're bringing a lot of the electronics from the R1 into the R6, which we knew was going to happen. That's how it's going to work. Like, that's how they bring costs down for those things on the R1, by increasing the mass production on those things. So they had to bring it into the R1. That's one of the advantages of getting an R1. You get all of those things first, but that's also part of the reason it costs so much more, because that R&D goes into the R1 and then it just trickles down into the other bikes that they offer. And actually the new R6 has more features than my R1 does. In 2012 they started integrating some of those electronics into my generation's R1, such as the traction control. That made it into my generation's R1, so it wasn't completely new for the new R1s, but a lot of those systems are more advanced than the new R1. Freaking love this road, guys. So what is new internally on the new R6? Well, you're going to have traction control now on the new R6. I believe it's 6 different levels of traction control, and then you can also turn it completely off. It also has modes. So in my generation R1, from the start, it has modes. So it has just the regular mode is standard mode, then it has A mode, which is a more aggressive throttle response, and then it has B mode, which is a more conservative throttle response. The new R6 is going to have that exact system. And what's curious,
very curious,
is that the new R6 has this gauge cluster design. It doesn't use the gauge cluster dash that came in the new R1 that was released starting in 2015. This is a 2017 model R6, and they're using a design that they stopped using in 2014 on the R1. I don't understand it. So here's the weird thing. The R6, the current generation R6, was first released in 2007. That generation, the 2007 to 2016 R6, uses the gauge cluster for the R1 that was first released in 2004. So let me outline this a little bit. Yamaha released a redesigned R1 in 2004, and they used that from 2004 to 2008. That came with a new gauge cluster. In 2007, Yamaha released their new R6. That's the current generation R6, the one that we have right now through 2016. And that generation R6 uses the 2004 to 2008 R1 gauge cluster. Then in 2009, Yamaha released the next R1, which is the one that I have, and that ran from 2009 to 2014, and that uses this gauge cluster. But the R6, even though it was first released before my R1 generation and ran for 10 years, crossing 3 different R1 generations. You have the 2004 to 2008, the 2009 to 2014, and then the 2015 to current R1. The current generation R6 has spanned all 3 of those generations for R1. And instead of using the gauge cluster that they've now updated to the new R1, they're using the gauge cluster that they released in 2009 on this R1. A 7-year-old gauge cluster. I understand that you have to have pieces that separate the R1 from the R6, but there are so many other features and reasons to get an R1 over an R6. Why are you going to skimp out and use a 7-year-old gauge cluster? Is it really that big of a difference in cost that you can't just use the new one? And you know what? It might be, because the R6 doesn't have a lot of the features that the R1 has. It doesn't have, for example, the brake sensitivity. So on the gauge cluster of the new R1, when you pull in the brake, it shows you how much brake pressure you're using. This is a very simple display. Everything on this display is on the new R6. but the R6 doesn't have everything that's on the new R1. But I still wish that they would have made a slightly different version of the new R1's gauge cluster, which looks legit. Like, Ducati has been using those types of screens on their bikes for quite a while now. The new R1 now has it. I just don't understand why they're keeping the R6 stuck back with the 2009 R1 in its gauge cluster. I want to get the new R1. I've said that I want to get a new R1 when they do the mid-cycle refresh for that bike. But I also wanted to get another R6, and I was hoping that the new R6s they released just blew me away. And from a looks perspective, it does. I really like it. But from an internal perspective, it's no different than what they've already had. I really have no reason to get a new R1 and a new R6. They look very similar, and the R6 is stuck with technology that's 8 years old. So to be honest, even though this morning I was pretty much implying that I was going to get a new R6, I don't know if I still can. The longer I think about it, I don't really know if it makes that much sense. Maybe in a year after they start hitting Craigslist, people selling used ones, maybe I'll pick one up then, but it just doesn't make sense for me to buy a brand new R6 when it really doesn't offer that much other than looks. Now, I will note a few other things. Aside from the traction control, aside from the redesign, there are some changes. It does have new suspension, and that's probably its redeeming factor. It has the same forks as the new R1, which is awesome. They're tuned slightly differently for the R6, but they're the same forks. It has a new shock in the rear that's a lot nicer than the one that's on the current generation R6. So if anything makes it ride differently than the current one, it's going to be because of the suspension. And that may make a difference. I don't know. I'll have to ride it to actually see. It does have ABS, so along with traction control, it has ABS, so that's a really nice feature as well. It has a new bigger front brake rotor, so the current generation R6 has a 310mm brake rotor, whereas the new R6 has a 320mm, same as the R1. More stopping power is always good. Of course, it brings full LED lights all around, running lights, headlight, tail light, it's all LED just like on the R1, so that's really cool. It has integrated turn signals from the factory. You don't have those turn signal ears sticking out. It's a nice bike, don't get me wrong. I've already said I love the redesign. I think it looks outstanding. The current R6 is just looking dated, so it's nice to see them finally bringing the R6 into the new generation. But from an internal perspective, I just don't think they did enough. But those are just my thoughts. I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments. Let me know if you guys are thinking about getting one, what you think about the redesign, whether you think they really needed to do any performance upgrades or not. Let me know if you're happy with what Yamaha's announced today. It should go on sale in March. That's when you should be able to get them. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know it's a little bit different, me doing one of these impressions videos. But let me know if you'd like to see more of these kinds of videos in the future. Otherwise, this has been Motonosity. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're not subbed yet. Videos every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. I know this video is coming out on Thursday instead of Friday, but I wanted to get this out as quick as possible. Make sure you check back Sunday for the Build Series video on the Ruckus, the first one of the series. Cannot wait to show you guys. And I'll see you guys in the next one.